I have a head Radical 120 slim body squash racket. I'm going to be doing today. This is the last generation before the current model, so it has the gray and black with a kind of lava red orange cosmetic. You do this as a one piece in Tecnifibre 305 1.2 for a customer. One piece, like I said. I have my short side on this side. You can make your short side any side on this racket. It's symmetrical, so it doesn't really matter. But the last time I did this racket, I had the short side on this side. So to evenly wear out the grommets on both sides, I'm going to have the short side be this side this time. So what I like about doing these open throat squash rackets is they're basically just little scaled down mini tennis rackets. So it's just like doing a tennis racket basically. So all right, here we go. I'm gonna start the mains. We're doing this at 24 pounds for some good power and still retaining some good control. Go right up against the frame. So on tennis rackets, I'll like to do 3 on one side before I go to the next, but on squash and racquetball rackets, usually I'll just do 2, or the first 2 rather, and then I'll go to the other side. Just because they're smaller frames and just to kind of mitigate as much stress on one side as possible. All here, a little bit of tight squeeze, there we go. All right. So on we're skipping 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6th hole in the head. And then we're going to skip 7th hole in the throat and come back up for that last main here. I'm just going to leave that there for now. And finish out the short side. Again, skipping 6, going into 7. In the head. Skipping 7 in the throat, going to 8. And back up here. All right, now typically on a one piece, if I'm doing like a tennis racket, I'll put a starting clamp here so I could free this clamp up and do the top cross or the top 2 crosses if I need this clamp, if I'm doing the top 2, or 1 rather. Since I'm doing a squash racket and it's just 24 pounds, I'm actually going to do a double pull on the top 2 crosses and come back on this side, so I'm just going to need this clamp. Top, looks good. All right, since I'm doing a double pull, I'm going to actually use my knot function and do an extra 15%, just to kind of get these two at a relative spec. Let that tension sort itself out a little bit. Cool. And then tying off. You can tie off on either hole actually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 7. I think I might try and do 7 just to have more space on the knot. And sure it looks good up here. Yep. All right. Like I said in my other video, I like to kind of flatten these if I can so it's not so sharp, in case the player comes in contact with this area with their hand. You don't want to have them cut themselves. All right, and that's it for the short side. So now we're going to go back to this side, do the last main on the left. Gonna leave room for 2 crosses here, so I can weave one ahead and come back. So we're over there, over here. Yep. So we'll be starting over and ending under. Take that off since the last main is going into that with that sort of tension itself. This here. And we're good. So the last thing I was thinking about keeping cross strings straight, I like to kind of line them up with the grommet holes as best you can before you tension. I find that helps keep things in a straight line. So you can see I'm doing two different weaving methods, depending on what side of the racket I'm weaving at the time. Just usually with multi-filaments and things, I like to push weave, but sometimes it's just easier to pull, depending on what side. So you can see here, to minimize the string running up against the shoulder arm here, I actually pulled it through so it can come up here and have a straight line to the tension head. You usually, I mean, you don't have to do that, but I like to if I can, even if it costs me a little bit of time. I'm in no rush for this job, so I'm just stringing on a Saturday morning. Sometimes I'll use the gravity release, sometimes I just push the base down first to release. Just kind of really depends on my flow, I guess. But I'm used to always just hitting the base first. So sometimes I forget to do gravity release. So right here I see a little bit of a bow. So you want to get that as straight as you can while you're tensioning, especially. That's the best time to do it. So it doesn't help when you're OCD about it either, like me. So. Getting down here to the end. So what I might start doing is kind of, so in my last video I was talking about this stitching technique, or a modified stitching technique that you couldn't really see the angle on. So in tighter spaces, even if, once you get down here more, if pushing or pulling gets a little too tricky, especially with tennis rackets and other things in polyester, what I like to do is get a short amount of string through and then kind of keep the tip pointing up, and then I'll kind of do this motion like that. So it's kind of like knitting, maybe not so much stitching, or stitching and knitting, same thing I guess. But when I see other people talk about stitching, I see them like doing this kind of thing with the slide, but I'm talking about kind of keeping the angle up like this, and sort of really, you're like, you see what I mean. But it's handy to do for polyesters, especially shaped polyesters. But even on synthetic guts and multifilaments, since they're easier strings to handle generally, you can do it pretty fast too with that method if you want to. All right, so we have a shared hole here at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, on 8. So just get my pliers here. Help guide that in a little bit. All right, and we're going under on this string. So this one I might be able to see if I could push on this one. Yeah, I could probably do it. Over. Gonna go back out this shared hole on this side. I might need to cut a little point. Sharp tip. Try again here. Yeah, there you go. All right, so. Just try and get that straight. Make sure sure the string doesn't kink up on itself in the shoulder support. Tight confined spaces. All right, so let's see. Try this again right here. So kind of like that. We're getting to the end here. I think this is 15 that I'm tensioning across 15. This is the last cross, number 17, in another shared hole in hole 6 on both sides. Now we're going to tension cross 16. Gravity release. All right. Cut off a bit of string, but that's all right, because it's my reel. So now notice I did not do not tension there. I usually don't do it on squash rackets, just because it's in low tensions anyway, and a lot of the times squash and racquetball, it's really fast rallies, so you get a lot of mishits. So to help mitigate any premature breakage in the outer extremities of the racket, I usually don't increase knot tension. But of course that's up to player preference. This player doesn't really matter if I do it or not, or doesn't care, should I say. But of course, if they ask for it, you gotta do it. There's some touches. Just make sure the mains are straight. I like to look at it as if you're holding it. I think you can see it the best that way. And any crosses. Looks pretty good on the machine, but of course I'm going to take it off and I'm going to notice a bunch of little things because I'm OCD about it, and I'm going to fix it with my fingers. So there you have it. Head Radical 120 Slim Body.